RAF and US forces rain bombs on dozens of Iran-backed targets across Yemen. Rishi Sunak says attacks on international shipping by Houthi rebels cannot stand, while Biden hails successful blitz and vows more action if needed. British and American forces rained bombs on Iran-backed rebels in Yemen last night, using warships, fighter jets, and submarines. The RAF launched targeted strikes against Houthi military facilities in response to a series of attacks on international shipping in the Red Sea. Rishi Sunak insisted the move was in self-defense and said the UK will always stand up for freedom of navigation and the free flow of trade. President Biden also hailed the successful blitz, which was aided by Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, and vowed more action if it was needed. The Ministry of Defense said coalition forces identified key facilities involved in the rebels' targeting of HMS Diamond and U.S. Navy vessels on Tuesday and agreed to conduct a carefully coordinated strike to reduce the Houthis' capability to violate international law in this manner. Explosions were heard in the capital Sana'a and other major cities, including Hodeidah and Saada, shortly before midnight, on an evening where tensions in the Middle East escalated drastically, with U.S. officials admitting they were expecting a response from rebels. More than a dozen sites were bombed by Western forces, in raids which included submarine-launched Tomahawk missiles and fighter jets. The 4 RAF Typhoons used Paveway 4 guided bombs to conduct precision strikes on 2 targets that had been chosen to reduce the Houthis' capability to violate international law. They were assisted by an RAF Voyager refueling plane. One of the targets was a launching site for reconnaissance and attack drones in Bani, northwestern Yemen. Another was an airfield in Abs in the same area of Yemen. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the airstrikes also targeted sites associated with the Houthis' unmanned drone, ballistic and cruise missile, coastal radar, and air surveillance capabilities. Officials said the Houthi rebels, who have carried out a series of attacks in the Red Sea to disrupt shipping, had ignored a final warning as Mr. Sunak signed off on the raids during an emergency cabinet meeting last night. Iran has been involved in every phase of the Houthi attacks in recent months, a U.S. official added. The rebels' official media said the capital Sana'a, Hodeidah, and Saada were all targeted and blamed American aggression with British participation. Mr. Sunak said in a statement, "Despite the repeated warnings from the international community, the Houthis have continued to carry out attacks in the Red Sea, including against UK and US warships just this week. This cannot stand. The United Kingdom will always stand up for freedom of navigation and the free flow of trade. The Royal Navy continues to patrol the Red Sea as part of the multinational Operation Prosperity Guardian to deter further Houthi aggression, and we urge them to cease their attacks and take steps to de-escalate." Defense Secretary Grant Shapps added, "The threat to innocent lives and global trade has become so great that this action was not only necessary, it was our duty to protect vessels and freedom of navigation." The coordinated military assault comes just a week after the White House and a host of partner nations issued a final warning to the Houthis to cease the campaign of drone and missile attacks on commercial ships, which has been in progress since the start of the Israel-Hamas war, or face potential military action. The warning appeared to have had at least some short-lived impact, as attacks stopped for several days. A high-ranking Houthi official, Ali al-Kahum, vowed there would be retaliation. "The battle will be bigger and beyond the imagination and expectation of the Americans and the British," he said in a post on X, formerly Twitter. Al Masirah, a Houthi-run satellite news channel, described strikes hitting the Al-Dalami airbase north of Sana'a, the airport in the port city of the Hodeidah, a camp east of Saada, the airport in the city of Taiz, and an airport near Hajjah. The Houthis did not immediately offer any damage or casualty information. On Tuesday, the Houthi rebels fired their largest barrage of drones and missiles targeting shipping in the Red Sea, with U.S. and British ships and American fighter jets responding by shooting down 18 drones, 2 cruise missiles, and an anti-ship missile. On Thursday, the Houthis fired an anti-ship ballistic missile into the Gulf of Aden, which was seen by a commercial ship
but did not hit it. Transit through the Red Sea, from the Suez Canal to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, is a crucial shipping lane for global commerce.
About 12% of the world's trade typically passes through the waterway that separates Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, including oil, natural gas, grain, and everything from toys to electronics. President Biden said last night, these strikes are in direct response to unprecedented Houthi attacks against international maritime vessels in the Red Sea, including the use of anti-ship ballistic missiles for the first time in history. The response of the international community to these reckless attacks has been united and resolute. Today's defensive action follows this extensive diplomatic campaign and Houthi rebels' escalating attacks against commercial vessels. These targeted strikes are a clear message that the United States and our partners will not tolerate attacks on our personnel or allow hostile actors to imperil freedom of navigation in one of the world's most critical commercial routes. I will not hesitate to direct further measures to protect our people and the free flow of international commerce as necessary. Meanwhile, a U.S. defense official is reported to have told Voice of America, "We hit them pretty hard, pretty good." A joint statement by 10 governments issued through the White House said they would not hesitate to defend lives and protect the free flow of commerce in one of the world's most critical waterways. Denmark, Germany, New Zealand, and South Korea added their names to the 6 nations, the US, UK, Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, that took part in the joint strikes. The statement said, the Houthis' more than 24 attacks on commercial vessels since mid-November constitute an international challenge. Today's action demonstrated a shared commitment to freedom of navigation, international commerce, and defending the lives of mariners from illegal and unjustifiable attacks. The Ministry of Defense said that particular care was taken to minimize any risks to civilians when planning the strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. A statement said 4 RAF Typhoons used Paveway 4 guided bombs to conduct precision strikes on 2 targets that had been chosen to reduce the Houthis' capability to violate international law. The statement said one was a site at Bani in northwestern Yemen used to launch reconnaissance and attack drones. A number of buildings involved in drone operations were targeted by our aircraft. The other location struck by our aircraft was the airfield at Abs. Intelligence has shown that it has been used to launch both cruise missiles and drones over the Red Sea. Several key targets at the airfield were identified and prosecuted by our aircraft. In planning the strikes, particular care was taken to minimize any risks to civilians, and any such risks were mitigated further by the decision to conduct the strikes during the night. The detailed results of the strikes are being assessed, but early indications are that the Houthis' ability to threaten merchant shipping has taken a blow, and our commitment to protecting the sea lanes through which some 15% of the world's shipping passes and which is vital to the global economy has been amply demonstrated. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, "Today's strikes targeted sites associated with the Houthis' unmanned aerial vehicle, ballistic and cruise missile, and coastal radar and air surveillance capabilities. The United States maintains its right to self-defense, and, if necessary, we will take follow-on actions to protect U.S. forces." He added, "We will not hesitate to defend our forces, the global economy, and the free flow of legitimate commerce in one of the world's vital waterways." No retaliatory action by the Houthis had occurred yet. While we fully expect this action to diminish the Houthis' capability and degrade it, and certainly over time to reduce their capacity and propensity to conduct these attacks, we would not be surprised to see some sort of response, one U.S. official told reporters on a conference call. Associated Press journalists in Yemen's capital, Sana'a, heard 4 explosions early Friday local time but saw no sign of warplanes. 2 residents of Hodeidah, Amin Ali Saleh and Hani Ahmed, said they heard 5 strong explosions. Images supposedly showing the moment missiles struck were shared on X by freelance journalist Ali Al-Sakani. Hodeidah lies on the Red Sea and is the largest port city controlled by the Houthis. These are believed to be the first strikes the United States has carried out against the Houthis in Yemen since 2016. The military targets included logistical hubs, air defense systems, and weapons storage locations. Earlier on Thursday, the Houthis' leader said any American attack on the group would not go without a response. The Houthis, who seized much of Yemen in a civil war, have vowed to attack ships linked to Israel or bound for Israeli ports. However, many of the targeted ships have had no links to Israel. The Tehran-backed Houthis campaign in the Red Sea, launched in solidarity with Palestinian terror group Hamas in its conflict with Israel, poses a major threat to the global economy. The Treasury predicts that unless hostilities in the Red Sea cease, UK inflation could rise by 0.5%. This is due to the additional costs of longer shipping routes that avoid the Suez Canal and transit around the Cape of Good Hope.
The plans were finalized today following meetings of the Prime Minister's National Security Council and the Emergency Committee COBRA. Talk of a joint attack by the US and UK heightened in recent days, and Defense Secretary Grant Shapps warned further action would be taken if attacks persist, amid growing global concern about the disruption in the key global shipping route. He also said he believed the Houthis, a Shiite group which has held Yemen's capital since 2014, were acting with the support of Iran. The Tehran-backed Houthis' campaign in the Red Sea, launched in solidarity with Palestinian terror group Hamas in its conflict with Israel, poses a major threat to the global economy. The Treasury predicts that, unless hostilities in the Red Sea cease, UK inflation could rise by 0.5%. This is due to the additional costs of longer shipping routes that avoid the Suez Canal and transit around the Cape of Good Hope. The regime in Tehran has equipped the Houthis, an Islamic fundamentalist movement, with long-range rockets, kamikaze drones, and helicopters. The rebels control large swathes of Yemen, including its biggest port, Hodeidah. Its harbor is a military stronghold and could be on the UK-US target list. The Houthis also control militarized islands off the Yemeni coast and use them to launch attacks on Western ships they believe are headed for Israel. According to sources, the West has run out of defensive options to dissuade the Houthis, who have launched 27 attacks on international ships since November. Sir Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker of the House of Commons, was also briefed, according to reports. Mr. Shapps told Sky News earlier, "Be in no doubt at all. Iran is guiding what is happening there in the Red Sea, providing them not just with equipment to carry out those attacks, but also often with the eyes and ears to allow those attacks to happen. We must be clear with the Houthis that this has to stop, and that is my simple message to them today, and watch this space." The Royal Navy air defense destroyer HMS Diamond was involved in the response to the latest in a series of attacks, which the Houthis have claimed are a response to the Israeli bombardment of Gaza. Mr. Shapps also posted on X, formerly Twitter, "Overnight, HMS Diamond, along with US warships, successfully repelled the largest attack from the Iranian-backed Houthis in the Red Sea to date. Deploying Sea Viper missiles and guns, Diamond destroyed multiple attack drones heading for her and commercial shipping in the area, with no injuries or damage sustained to Diamond or her crew." The UK, alongside allies, have previously made clear that these illegal attacks are completely unacceptable, and if continued, the Houthis will bear the consequences. "We will take the action needed to protect innocent lives and the global economy." The U.S. Central Command says the Houthis have carried out 27 attacks in the Red Sea since November 19th. They said the rebels' latest attack came today at around 2 a.m. Yemen time, when they fired an anti-ship ballistic missile from Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen into international shipping lanes in the Gulf of Aden. One ship saw the missile hit the water. No one was injured and no damage was reported. It remains to be seen what form any further action might take from the US, the UK, and other allies. There has been speculation that a response could involve strikes on the Houthi command centers. The Prime Minister's official spokesman told reporters on Wednesday, "I am not going to speculate about how we will or will not respond to continued attacks. We do reserve the right to take further steps to protect commercial shipping and avoid the risk of further destabilizing the region. That is something we will keep under review. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, speaking in Bahrain, renewed warnings of a response. He said, "I'm not going to telegraph or preview anything that might happen. All I can tell you again, we've been clear with more than 20 other countries, that if this continues as it did yesterday, there will be consequences, and I'm going to leave it at that." Some major shipping lines and oil giant BP have already diverted vessels around southern Africa, adding time and cost to journeys rather than risk the Red Sea. If the crisis continues, the increased costs could be passed on to consumers, hampering efforts to curb inflation and reduce interest rates.
Meanwhile, Iran may seek to make good on a threat to close the Strait of Gibraltar if the UK retaliates against the Houthi rebel force for drone and missile attacks on ships in the Red Sea, a military expert has warned. Major General Chip Chapman, a former head of counterterrorism at the MOD, told GB News, "One of the things which could be done if you take the Houthis as one of their proxy forces, Iran, is that they've said that they might close the Strait of Gibraltar. You might say they haven't got the capability to do that, but they've also got a proxy force with the Polisario Front in Morocco. So, although it might seem unlikely, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't happen." He added, "In essence, this is what the Houthis would say is part of the theater of war against the Israelis. And from both their perspective and the Iranian perspective, that is a unity of fronts and a ring of fire around the Israelis." Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said he was monitoring the situation closely when he appeared before MPs. He told the Commons Treasury Committee, "We've certainly seen, as best we can tell from the monitoring, shipping traffic is being affected and is being rerouted. That will increase shipping prices and shipping costs. I think initially that will be an issue in the monetary policy world. I would say one of the things, fortunately, that hasn't happened is that we have not had a prolonged spike in oil prices. We had a bit of an initial spike, and at the moment we're seeing that, if anything, the oil price is actually coming down a bit, and there seems to be some price management to keep it there." U.S. Central Command said the Houthis had launched a complex attack, and a total of 18 attack drones, 2 anti-ship cruise missiles, and an anti-ship ballistic missile were shot down in the operation, which involved Diamond U.S. warships and FA-18 fighter jets. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken last night warned of consequences if the Houthis continue and called on Iran to end their support for the rebels. Meanwhile, Admiral Lord West, the former First Sea Lord, said that the UK and US has to show that enough is enough after drones and missiles launched from the Arabian state were shot down by HMS Diamond and American warships. Speaking to Talk TV, Lord West said, "I think we're in a position now where we can't just sit there shooting down missiles, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones being fired at our warships, but also at peaceful merchant ships, most of which have nothing to do with Israel at all. And we can't just sit there letting them take pot shots, shooting them down at immense cost. We've got to make it clear to them that this is not allowed. They can't disrupt world trade in this way, and I think the answer is, in self-defense terms, if someone fires missiles at you from a site, that site is perfectly valid as a target for you, and I think probably using the USS Eisenhower, we can carry out attacks on the sites within Yemen." Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron told MPs on the Foreign Affairs Committee on Tuesday that Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, which had come in the wake of the Gaza conflict, were unacceptable in one of the most important sea lanes. Tonight, Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf has called for a recall of Parliament. He said, "The UK does not have a good record of military intervention in the Middle East. It is therefore incumbent that Westminster is recalled. MPs briefed and allowed to debate and scrutinize any decision to pursue military action that the UK government is proposing. It comes as the leader of the Houthi rebels threatened the US and Britain with even larger attacks in the Red Sea after their navies intercepted a major one. US and British forces shot down 18 drones and 3 missiles launched by the Houthis late Tuesday in what London described as their biggest attack so far in solidarity with Palestinians in Hamas-ruled Gaza. Any American aggression will never go without a response, rebel leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi said in speech broadcast live by the Houthis Al Masirah television.
The response to any American attack will not only be at the level of the operation that was recently carried out, but it will be greater than that. The rebels said Tuesday's attack was in retaliation for the U.S. Navy's killing of 10 Houthi fighters on December 31st, as they attempted to board a merchant vessel passing through the Red Sea off the coast of Yemen. The Houthis have carried out a growing number of attacks on Red Sea shipping since the Gaza war erupted with Hamas's unprecedented attack on Israel on October 7th. The UN Security Council on Wednesday adopted a resolution that demanded the Houthis immediately cease their attacks.
The Houthi campaign, which the rebels say only targets vessels linked to Israel or its allies, has caused major disruption, with many shipping firms opting for a much longer route around the tip of Africa for security concerns. Washington says more than 20 nations have joined the U.S.-led Operation Prosperity Guardian to protect the vital sea lane, which usually carries about 12% of maritime trade. The Houthi leader said that there is no problem for the Europeans, China, and the whole world to pass through the Red Sea. The only and exclusive target are ships linked to Israel. But he added that any government that joins the military action against the rebels' naval forces would face reprisals. Whoever wants to get involved, attack our dear people, and target the naval forces is actually risking their fleet and commercial ships, Houthi warned. We hope that the rest of the Arab and Islamic countries will never get involved with the Americans, the Israelis, and the British. Vessels passing Yemen have come under frequent assault from Houthi rebels since Israel launched its offensive in Gaza following the October 7th terror attack by the Hamas group. Shipping companies have responded by rerouting their vessels around South Africa to avoid the risk posed in the strait at a cost of £800,000 per boat. And Tesco boss Ken Murphy has warned this could create a knock-on effect on the prices of some goods. He said, if they do have to go the whole way around Africa to get to Europe, it extends shipping times, it constrains shipping space, and it drives up shipping costs. So that could drive inflation on some items, but we just don't know. Earlier today, Iran claimed responsibility for the hijacking of an oil tanker by 6 military men in the Gulf of Oman this morning that once was at the center of a major crisis between Tehran and Washington. The seizure of the tanker was carried out upon an Iranian judicial order, Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency said this afternoon, shortly after the vessel appeared to have changed course towards Iran. Iran's state-run IRNA news agency later confirmed a tanker had been seized by Iran's navy.